Paradox of evaluation and generation involves both being the gatekeeper who judges ideas and the generator who encourages new ones. So, balancing critique with creativity. Leaders must be able to balance encouragement and scrutiny at the same time. They're the gas and brake pedal of innovation and creativity and solving ill defined problems. Encourage too much, and you get noise without any sort of direction. And if you evaluate too harshly, then you're going to kill creativity before it matures into a problem or a solution that can actually be moved out on. So, really, really effective leaders are ones who are able to create an environment where novel ideas can form, they can breathe a little bit, and they can mature rather than roam around aimlessly. And that means separating the creative process from the critical process long enough for each to work. And developmental feedback systems are a really, really solid way to do that. So, feedback that's focused on process improvement rather than outcome judgment. And the research, as well as my own personal experience, shows that this sort of system significantly increases team creativity because it turns the criticism into recalibration. The insight here is that effective leaders know that timing in the creative process is really critical. They allow ideation to flourish early on, but then they narrow their focus with structured evaluation later. It's a choreography and it's a dance of curiosity and control at the same time. Most leaders, especially ones that are under pressure, and particularly those who are highly conscientious, meaning those who have a high preference for organization, which tend to be most managers, tend to do this process backwards. They evaluate way too early and way too soon, which shuts down the exploration part of this process before ideas have the time to mature. When people on your team anticipate judgment too soon, they're going to self censor their ideas. And the result isn't the efficiency that managers are after. It actually silences ideas before they can evolve your team or the organization. This paradox is psychological as much as it is procedural. It requires the psychological composure to let unfinished ideas live long enough to become valuable, despite your preference or your tendency to criticize. And it also demands a certain degree of patience and emotional intelligence to challenge the work and the idea without damaging the ownership of those who have the idea in the first place. In the early days of my platoon commander a few years ago, I was faced with a really challenging and really aggravating problem, at least at the time it was, and one that was also demoralizing to my team if I didn't resolve it. And so we didn't have a set deployment agenda during our deployment window. And for a group of hungry SEALs who wanted meaningful work, this scenario can be catastrophic for morale. And it makes all the preparation and all the training that we're required to do for deployment certification seem a lot less worth it because we had no direction afterwards. To make matters worse, we had very little guidance from my own leadership at the time of what I should orient my platoon's future towards. Now, fortunately for me, I had a really smart leadership team. And I was also fortunate enough with my prior assignments to at least know where I should start. And so myself and my leadership team dove into several weeks of exploration of as many strategic documents as we could get our hands on and then read. And then from there, we reverse engineered a set of potential avenues we could at least explore based on our understanding of the military's regional priorities around the world. Now, what we discovered was that most of them would be covered by the deploying units already slated for those areas. So I assessed that the likelihood of most of those ideas had a very low chance of getting investment from my leadership. There was one that we thought showed immense promise, and that was deploying use of regional command funds to conduct training and operations in the domestic U.S., something that the West Coast-based SEAL teams hadn't done, at least to my knowledge. And as we continued to flush out this potential idea, the stars ended up aligning. A SEAL team from the East Coast pulled out of the exercise whose funds could potentially sponsor the training and operations that we were starting to conceptualize, and we jumped on it immediately. And then we started the process all over again of ideation and then evaluation because we had a new set of parameters and new information. Without going through this concerted effort with discipline of ideation and evaluation paradox, this opportunity never would have presented itself, and we never would have had the clarity to know when to jump on it when it did present itself. So here's a quick simple way to operationalize this paradox, the generation evaluation paradox in your team or your organization. First is to separate the phases. So during the ideation sessions, you have to ban evaluation, at least temporarily. The only rule during those sessions is contribution. And then the second step is to establish criteria early on. So before moving to the evaluation stage, you need to define what good looks like to you. Now, for my leadership team, we wanted a few things. We wanted good training, we wanted good training locations, and we wanted good professional development for the guys in my platoon because we couldn't guarantee a deployment. But what we could guarantee was that we could fight for those things and we could get at least one of them. We ended up getting all of them, but at the time we didn't know that. And then the third way to operationalize this paradox is using developmental feedback. So every critique of this creative process has to include some sort of forward direction, even if it's a low resolution forward direction. So concrete suggestion, or as much as you can make it concrete, or an improvement path. This is a really simple model to help ensure that the creative phase produces a volume of ideas that you need to actually get something good. And then the evaluation phase produces, or at least reveals, what's actually of value. So the key takeaway here for the generation evaluation paradox is that effective leadership, whether that's in innovation or while solving ill-defined problems, it's not about constant positivity and it's not about ruthless critique. It's about sequencing both at the right time. So if you generate without fear and evaluate without bias and then connect both through process discipline, that's how you're able to build a system that creates better ideas, that creates more creative ideas. And also it creates better people over time.